Hi, welcome to part 1 of SST8 Instructional Strategies series on close and critical reading study skills. I am Kim Nagy.
And I am Debbie Thurl.
This webinar describes the critical components of the close reading instructional routine where students are guided in their understanding of complex text. Our focus with part 1 of this series is to discuss the meaning of close reading and where the practice originated. As educators, we also need to understand the importance of this practice and which components are included in a close read. Not all texts deserve a close read, and not all words in a text deserve a close read. If the text is reading for pleasure, to locate a bit of information, or the text is easily accessible, then the close reading practice is not necessary. Close reading is only used with complex text, that is, texts that do not give up their meaning easily or quickly. There are a number of interrelated strategies and practices that combine to create a close reading experience. When the reader analyzes any given text at the word, phrase, paragraph, and section levels, they are implementing close reading. As the reader analyzes the text, he or she determines which details are most important and how they fit together, logically, to convey the author's central idea or theme. As a result of close reading, the reader begins to critically evaluate these ideas and themes. Effect size tells how powerful something is in creating change. As a reminder, the hinge point in effect size is 0.4 for 1 year's growth. Anything under that hinge point could happen naturally and represents less than a year's growth. We want to focus on the strategies and practices that are proven to have a high effect size of 0.4 or higher in order to support students making at least 1 year's growth. Note the above strategies that make up the close reading process all have a very high effect size. That says a lot about this practice. This chart gives a sense of urgency for teachers to be implementing the close reading process within their instructional routine. All students in all grade levels should experience close reading. The age determines what is appropriate and how much scaffolding occurs. So let's begin our deep dive into close reading.
For those of you interested in the origin of close reading, it emerged with the post-World War I era. To the new critics at that time period, poetry was a special kind of discussion, a means of communicating feeling and thought that could not be expressed in any other kind of language. It differed in its qualities from that of science or philosophy, but it conveyed equally valid meanings. They wanted to define and formalize the qualities of poetic thought and language, and utilize the technique of close reading with special emphasis on the connotative and associative values of words, and on the multiple functions of figurative language, symbol, metaphor, and image in the works. Let's take this practice and apply it to current day, grade 6 Ohio State standards for figurative language. Students must be able to interpret figurative language, not just identify the terms. The close reading practice is necessary to dig deep to this level. To begin our journey today, let's take a look at an overview of close reading. There are 3 articles listed above. You are to choose one article to read on your own. You can use the questions posted below to frame your thinking or discuss with team members. What stood out from the article? How will you put what you have learned into action? What will be the impact of your actions? And by all means, share with some teammates if you have them around you. Return to the webinar once you have completed this activity. Through your reading of the articles in the prior slide, you probably concluded that there are several reasons to use close reading in your classroom instruction. Most importantly, this routine builds the habits of mind regarding the process of reading a text closely to study its parts and gain deeper comprehension and understanding of the content. Learning is much more than simply reading a text one time. By studying and rereading parts of the text for different purposes, you are building a deeper understanding that will thrust the learner forward to transfer that knowledge and deep thinking into a new situation. Another reason to use close reading is that this process is at the heart of Ohio's literacy standards and is spoken of in Standard 1 and gives students the skill set to dig into a text to accomplish the work required in Standards 2 through 9. This work only happens through close reading a complex text. A reminder to all of our disciplines out there, the literacy standards are the foundation of learning in your content area too. So we must all be good stewards of promoting the close reading process.
As we all know, virtual teaching is part of our reality right now. You may be asking yourself, how can I effectively teach close reading virtually? Well, it can be done. Here are 14 tips to help you get started. Check the list to see what you are already implementing. Then choose 1 to 2 you are not implementing and try them in the coming days and weeks. We've also included 3 websites for more detail in how to best teach close reading virtually. You may wish to stop the video and review the articles. If so, return to the next slide once you finish. Fisher, Fry, and Hattie tell us in Visible Learning for Literacy that learning is a process, not an event. Learning demands that students be able to apply and transfer their knowledge, skills, and strategies to new tasks and new situations. To get students to the transfer level is difficult. The close reading process is a study skill that supports the work of helping students to study something deeply enough to be able to transfer the concept or skills in a new situation. This process, noted above, is not used with all text, but with concepts that are truly worth exploring deeply and have implications for new situations. This will require us to truly select complex texts worthy of deep study. Turn and talk with about the following question. What is the benefit of engaging in surface, deep, or transfer learning with students? Stop the webinar to discuss, then return to this slide once you have completed your discussion. Literacy learning is a process that follows a spiral as students move from understanding the surface information, such as basic facts, concepts, and principles associated with studying a skill or topic, toward the deepening exploration of what lies beneath or leveraging knowledge across domains in novel situations. This requires teachers to understand and consider the levels of learning to expect from their students. It also requires careful planning so students encounter situations that foster the transfer and generalization of their learning to new tasks and problems. Transfer learning is the ultimate goal. To accomplish it, you must go through surface and deep learning. At each phase of learning, specific instructional and curricular methods rise to the top as worthy of nudging students toward the goal. So, in revisiting our previous chart on slide 3, seen here, we see that specific strategies work best when engaging in the close, critical reading process. Take a moment to revisit the chart and think about which strategies are good for surface level work and deepening understanding.
As part of the instructional process, educators routinely check for understanding through the learning cycle. The purpose is to determine what students know and understand and where they still need additional support to grow their understanding in the learning process. This formative assessment process can give the teacher insight into patterns across his or her students. Checking for understanding is commonly accomplished by asking questions, analyzing written tasks, and administering low-stakes quizzes to measure students' new information and skills. With close reading, checks for understanding will help the teacher gauge where students are able to perform key skills during a close read, such as metacognitively thinking about what they read, or the ability to use textual evidence within a text for a specific purpose. The teacher's role is to either respond in meaningful ways or to plan for follow-up instruction. As with any new task or strategy, you will need to allow time for practice. Being consistent will help the students learn the expectation you set for your classroom. For example, if you use an admit slip daily, the students know to get settled and start their learning right away. If you are planning to implement the use of Socratic seminar, there are some key practices that the teacher needs to establish prior to having students engage in this process. Choosing a complex text that invites inquiry is ideal. Explaining to students the expectation that they will continually refer back to the text for information. Supplying students with Post-it notes will help them annotate the text as they read in preparation for the seminar discussion. Teachers will also have to scaffold students with the roles and responsibilities, with the questions used, which should be open-ended and prompt their peers to explore the text and converse. Clear norms for the seminar should always be established with students focusing on the characteristics in debating versus discussion. Reflection of seminar effectiveness should give high priority to the text-centered student talk. Also, asking students to reflect on their participation and set future goals for their role with this work will move this task and the skills students acquire forward. The graphic depicted in this slide refers to 4 types of feedback that can be given. In case you have difficulty reading this slide, starting on the left side is feedback about a task. Next is feedback about processing of a task, feedback about yourself as a person, and finally, feedback about self-regulation. To determine which level of feedback is most appropriate for a given situation, think about the student's acquisition of new knowledge and skills. The type of feedback to provide is guided by the level of instruction and learning. To use task-level feedback, use it with new material. Your feedback could focus on use of annotation or note-taking. It could also focus on rereading a text to determine key details that support the main idea. You can use process-level feedback when the student has some degree of proficiency and needs feedback on their ability to determine main idea or theme of a text. And you can use self-regulation level feedback when the student has a high degree of proficiency and needs to monitor their ability to close read or analyze their use of the process and what they attained. Research shows that self-regulated learners are more focused, more effective, and persistent in attaining their goals. Use of discussions with peers is another way to give feedback to promote students to self-regulate and monitor their learning.
We have just provided you with an overview of close reading. Part 2 of our series will delve into the strategies embedded within close reading. We will also share some additional information to further your comfort level with utilizing the close reading process in your face-to-face or virtual classroom. We hope you will join us to deepen your learning. If there was an idea that resonated with you today, perhaps you are willing to share on our Twitter feed at OhioSST8.
The resources listed above were used to develop this presentation. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you join us for part 2 of Close and Critical Reading for a deeper dive.